Welcome to Los Encinos State Historic Park. My name is Karen Griffin. I'm your host today. Today we're going to be doing our presentation is part of our Cultivating History series. Um, this series is about all of the plants that have been grown here for production here at Los Encinos. And the subject for today is one of the oldest plants from this park, and it is the prickly pear cactus. Now, the prickly pear cactus is native to the Americas, and it has been used by animals and by humans for food for thousands of years. In addition to being a fruit and a vegetable, it's also been used for things like its spines can be used for sewing or poking holes. Um, its fruits and a bug that lives on it can be used to dye clothing. And it also makes a rather interesting fence line if you're on a rancho. It's really good at keeping the animals in and keeping other things out that you may not want to visit your ranch. Okay, so let's jump right into the prickly pear. It's part of a genus called the Aputina genus, and this genus is really cool. There's a lot of different cacti in this genus, and they like to intermingle, and because of that, they can make lots of different hybrids and crossbreeds and new cactuses. So there's a lot of different variety in this genus. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is adaptions. So I want you to imagine you're out in a field and you find a dandelion, okay? So we're out in the field, we find a dandelion, and we pick it up out of the ground. And the first thing we're going to see at the bottom of the dandelion is roots. So if we look over here at our cactus, um, it's got roots too. All right, dandelion roots, cactus roots, not too weird of a plant. These are things we're used to. All right, now if we're looking at our dandelion and we go up from the roots, the next thing we're going to see is a stem. Okay? All right, let's look over here at our cactus. Do you see a stem? Where's the stem? I don't see a stem. All right, so instead of a stem, we have nopales on our prickly pear cactus, or pads, or cladoids, all kind of the same thing. So not a stem, but these pads that are on our prickly pear. Now later, we're going to be drawing some prickly pears, and it's important to learn about the anatomy of something before we start to draw it. So keep that in mind, that our prickly pear doesn't have stems, it has pads. Okay, so back to our dandelion. The next thing, you're going to look up the stem, and coming out of the stem are going to be its little leaves, its cute little leaves. All right, where are the cute little leaves on our cactus over here? Cactus, where's your cute little leaves? I don't see any leaves. Do you see leaves? I don't see any leaves. No, instead we have aureoles or spines, glochids. These are the things that make a prickly pear prickly. They've got them all over their little pads, and they're coming out. So instead of leaves, we've got those guys. All right, well, let's go back to our dandelion. The next thing we see on our dandelion is a flower. Good news! On our cactus, we've got flowers as well. And when those flowers pollinate, they make little berries or tunas or fruit on our cactuses, and hence the prickly pear cactus. The pear referring to the berry that grows on the top of the pads. Okay, we've learned about the basic anatomy of our cactus. Now let's take a deep dive into all of those different parts. Starting from the bottom, now we're on our way up. We're going to start with roots. All right. So a cactus root, if your dandelion root's probably going to go straight down. It's going to be a taproot. But if you're a cactus, you're likely going to be living in an arid environment. An arid environment is a fancy word for saying it's dry, and you need water. You're a plant. You need water. So the cactuses usually spread their roots out as far as they can. They want lots of surface area for those roots so they can collect lots of water. Um, Now, if you're a prickly pear, you are highly adaptable. You're like a superhero of adaptability. You might also have a taproot, and if you're in an area where there's a lot of water, that taproot might get fairly big and help anchor you into the ground. If you think about California, there are places that are dry most of the year, but then get a lot of water really quick. So cactuses have to save all of the water from those bursts of rain that we get. And taproots and wide spreading roots are two of the ways that they can do that. All right, now speaking of water, let's move our way up the cacti. And the next thing we're going to talk about is the nopales, the pads, the cladoids. These are the pads of the prickly pear. We said they were kind of like the stem or the branches, but they have some cool differences. Now, if you look on the inside of these, if you ever see like a cactus skeleton, it's going to be quite fibrous and almost look like a sponge. That's because inside of these guys is holding a lot of water. Like I said, it needs to hold that water. Now, it wants to keep that water inside of these pads. So on the outside, it's very waxy, and that wax going to help. That wax is going to help keep the water inside of these pads. Um, there's another cool trick that this does, and it photosynthesizes, which is something that leaves do on plants, right? But on our cactus, it's going to be these pads that do the photosynthesis. And they have a really cool trick. They do it at night. They're able to photosynthesize at night. And that way, when they're doing the gas exchange, they're not losing all of that water during the daytime when it might be really hot and really sunny. They're able to photosynthesize at night. Um, so that one's really cool. Now, if you're a new pad, a brand new Nepales, and you're tender, then you can be harvested, and you are the first edible part of our plant here, which is considered a vegetable. If you take off the spines, you cook it up, you can put it into tacos um, and other cuisines. This is also considered the vegetable part of our cacti. Now, there's one more cool thing. If this falls off the cactus, like if something bumps into it or it falls off naturally, these guys are able to root into the ground and basically clone the plant. And this is a really great way to spread prickly pear all over the place. Is to have these fall to the ground. They have roots at the bottom, and they're able to spread. Because remember, if you're a plant, you can't just get up and walk around. You've got to find different ways of spreading out. And this is one of the ways that the prickly pear cactus does it, by growing roots through its pads and basically making clones of itself. Cool. All right. What is next? Ah, all right. The areolas, these guys are little dots that are on the pads of the prickly pear. And they're really important. A lot of things happen with these guys. It's where the spines come out of the cactus, but it's also where the buds come out of the cactus. And those buds are going to become either new pads and make the cactus grow taller and give it a little bit more space to photosynthesize, or they're going to become flowers and prickly pears. So these guys have a lot of different purposes. Now, those spines protect it against big predators. But if you're a prickly pear and your name is Prickly Pear, then you've got some extra prickle in your cactus. You've got an additional set of prickles that are called glochids. Now, glochids, there we go. These guys are smaller and they're hair-like and they've got barbs on them. And you might be able to avoid those big spines that are on the prickly pear, but it is very hard to avoid these guys. And if they get into your skin, you can't just pull them out. They get lodged in there, and you have to wait a long time, and it's really aggravating. And that's why people who work with cactuses usually have gloves that they wear that protect them from these tiny spines. They are all over the pear and the Nepales. So if you're going to be eating the prickly pear, you have to figure out a way to get rid of these first. And there's a lot of different strategies. Going to like rubbing it on a grit, Apparently, my grandmother-in-law used to sweep them across the floor with a special broom, and they would fall off. And then some people get a mini blowtorch and torch them off, or put them in a barbecue and have the fire on the barbecue burn them off. Um, if you don't get all of them off and you end up ingesting them, eating them, they cause gastronomical distress. They hurt your stomach. They hurt your intestines. So that's one of the things you have to be really careful with these prickly pears. They've got a lot of defenses and they're highly adaptable. And you have to be careful when you're trying to eat them. Okay, so next up, we're going to get to the flowers. And these guys are really pretty, and they come in a lot of different colors, from yellow to orange to purple to pink. Um, and they have a really cool feature. In a lot of plants, they've got like a dominant and a submissive a gene. So maybe like tall, short. And that can be turned off and on like a light switch. Blue flowers, white flowers. Um, but these guys tend to double their chromosomes, which means they have like twice the amount of possibilities. Like imagine if most a lot of plants were like a dice. Instead of rolling two dice, a lot of times prickly pears end up rolling four dice, which gives them a lot of different possibilities and makes adaptation easier. So let's say your environment changed really quickly, and now there's a bunch of salt in the dirt, and you need to survive, right? So you pop out your flowers, and you're going to send out a bunch of different seeds, and you're rolling a lot of different dice, and these different seeds have a lot of different genes that are turned on and off. And maybe one of those genes make it so that that seed does okay in really salty soil. All you need is for that one seed to be successful, and then that cactus can grow into an adult and it can clone itself. Um, so, like I said, these plants are highly adaptable. They've been around for a long time, and they've got a lot of cool strategies um, to stay to stay around for longer. All right. So once these guys get pollinated, they turn into the fruit of the plant. Now, the fruit of the prickly pear plant is a berry. And I want to take a little bit of a sidebar and talk about berries because this is a really fun game or trick you can play on your parents during dinner time. Is you can ask them what is a berry and to list berries. Okay? So, a botanical berry has a skin on the outside, it's fleshy on the inside, and it has seeds on the inside. So, if we're thinking about it, prickly pear, skin on the outside, fleshy on the inside, seeds on the inside, it is a berry. Blueberries, skin on the outside, fleshy on the inside, it has seeds on the inside. Not easy to see, but they're in there. Um, let's see, bananas, wild bananas. They've got skin on the outside, they're fleshy on the inside, and the wild ones, they still have the seeds that are on the inside. What about chili peppers? Let's see, they've skin on the outside, fleshy on the inside, seeds on the inside, chili peppers, bell peppers. Those are all berries. Now, what's not a berry? Think of a strawberry. Are the seeds on the inside of a strawberry? Nope. Strawberry isn't a berry. Same for blackberries, boysenberries, raspberries. Those are all aggregate fruits. They are not berries. So anyway, that's a fun game that you can play. Hey mom, dad, is a cucumber a berry? It is. Um, but let's get back to prickly pear. Okay, so prickly pear. What can you do with a prickly pear fruit? Well, you can eat it. But a lot of times it's easier to eat it if you make it into a puree first. So if you get all the pulp out and you take out the skin and the seeds, definitely the spines. You can make it into a syrup, and it's if you make it into a pancake syrup, it's absolutely delicious. Prickly pear pancake syrup is divine. You can also take that syrup and you can put it into beverages like agua fresca or soda. and it's a really beautiful flavoring, and it's got that pink color to it that really makes a beverage pop. Now, once you're done making that puree, you're going to have a lot of seeds left over. Um, the seeds are very useful too. They are thought to be anti inflammatory, and they're used in a lot of skin cream and cosmetics. Afterwards, they're pressed, and um, they're made into those for us to consume as well. So those are all of the things you can do with the fruit of a prickly pear cactus. Okay, what is next? Hmm. Ah, yes. So, farming prickly pear cactuses. Man, this is such a useful plant. Let's farm them. They already grow here naturally. What's the problem? Uh, they got spines. Okay, so they've got spines. What are we going to do? We're going to make the prickly pear spineless. That's the idea that Luther Burbank had back in the early 1900s. He was going to make the prickly pear spineless so it'd be easier to cultivate. You could take the pads and you can use them to feed your livestock, and you could take the prickly pears and you can use them to make prickly pear puree. Great idea. Do you remember how complicated the flowers were of prickly pears? Right? It's easy to clone them, but if you're trying to make something new, you're not going to want to clone. You're going to have to wait for the flowers. And the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to wait 3 years for a cactus to mature just so you can harvest the pollen from flowers. And I remember, instead of rolling 2 dice, you're rolling 4 dice. So you don't know what you're going to get. Also, these guys readily pollinate with everyone else around them. Um, uh, Prickly pear cactuses love to hybridize, so it's very hard to control your experiments. And this almost did Luther Burbank in. Now, this was a very successful botanist, and he has made a lot of varieties of stuff that you grow in your gardens today. This guy was very successful, but he was not very successful with the prickly pear. After 5 years, he did get a prickly pear that was spineless, and it is the prickly pear that we typically buy in grocery stores today. Um, that said, the natives already had several varieties of spineless prickly pears that they've been eating for thousands of years. Because remember, once you get one odd duck, once you get one odd cactus that doesn't have any prickles, you can just clone it. So, of the thousands of years they've been sitting around America, there have been some that have just naturally shown up without any spines, and people have been quick to grab those up and clone them. So, uh, these guys are hard to cultivate. Um, in addition to being difficult to make high to control, um, these guys were introduced in Australia in order to help the red dye industry. Um, there's these little bugs that live on the prickly pear cochineals, and they're used to dye fabric red. So, us in the early 1900s, early late 1800s, Australia decided that it was gonna get in on this red dye business. But there's nothing in Australia that eats prickly pear cactus. So there's no natural predators, and it's a highly adaptable cactus. And it just took over Queensland. It literally took over Queensland. If you look at the dark red on that map, those were areas that were considered impenetrable. Um, and there were ranches where the people had to move out because the cactus took over not only all of the livestock fields and all of the cultivating fields, but it eventually took the homes. And no one could figure out how to get rid of it. They made a law that encouraged people to destroy the prickly pear as much as they could. Um, and even after passing the Destruction Act, they weren't successful. What was successful is decades later, they imported this little moth, um, originally from Florida, and it eats the prickly pear cactus. So it is one of the natural predators of the prickly pear cactus. And this moth, this was successful in getting that population under control. And they were so grateful to this little guy that they even made a plaque, a little memorial to the moth for helping get them out of a very prickly situation. Okay, so we have mentioned this little guy, and we're going to, the next thing we're going to talk about is cochineals. All right, these guys are used as a dye for prickly pears, and they naturally um, colonate on prickly pear cactuses. So this is one of my cactuses from my park, and you can see it's got some sort of infestation. A lot of people think it's a fungus, but it's not a fungus. It's a little bug. The females don't have wings, and they make these little cocoons out of silk, like kind of to protect them. And the larvae also live in there, and they attach themselves to the prickly pear while they're eating them. And if you look up close, you can you can see the legs coming out of. I don't like it when I see the legs. They're not cute anymore when they have the legs. So that's what they look like really up close. Now, if you want to make some dye out of these guys, the thing that you're making the dye out of is inside of their stomach is this carbonic acid. And if you eat good and plenties, or on a lot of lipstick, a lot of makeup, and a lot of strawberry yogurt, you're gonna see a ingredient called carmine, and that's the acid from these guys' stomachs. Now they have it to protect them from ants, but it is bright red, and it can be used for dyeing fabric. And step one is you have to harvest them. So here's another one of my pads, and I'm just gonna gently take them off. And you can see they've got the silk on the outside, and then the little beetle is inside of that silk cocoon. Okay, now we've got our bugs. The next thing we would do is normally we would lay them outside and let the sun dry them. And then once they were dry, we would separate the silk from the bug. But it's raining. It's been raining for a while, and I don't have anywhere to dry these. So luckily, I have some pre-dried bugs that we're going to use for this experiment. Now, remember I said the thing that makes the red dye is the acid that's in these guys. So the first thing we have to do is we have to grind up the dried bugs and release that acid. So we've got our dried bugs here, and we're going to put them in a little mortar and pestle. And you can see as we grind it up, we've got that red color that we're looking for. So part of this is the little exoskeleton of the bugs, and the other part, the red part, that's going to be the acid from their gut. So now we got to make it soluble. It's just a fancy way of saying it needs to dissolve into something. So for this experiment, we're going to use warm water. It's not the best, but it gets the job done. So we're going to go ahead and put the powder in there and put some warm water in there. And now this is a dye, and it will stain pretty much everything. So we are going to put our gloves on, and we're going to mix it and mix it and mix it and see how much of it we can get to dissolve in our warm water. Okay, so we've taken up some of the dye into our squeezy bottle. And now we're going to do an experiment. So remember I said this was an acid? Since it's an acid, you can do a little bit of a chemistry experiment here. So an acid is a pH reading, so you can have acid or a base, and it's like a scale. So you can change the chemicals to move it to different parts of that scale. And when you change that, with this particular dye, you get new colors. So if we look at just like the base, we got kind of like a brownish red. Not bad. Um, the first thing we're going to add is cream of tartar. Now, all of these additives you can find either at the grocery store or at the craft store. They're really easy to find. So first we're going to take our cream of tartar and we're going to add it to our dye. And it's going to make this really pretty orange color. It's going to take that brownish red and it's going to turn it into a bright orange. Just put a little more water in there. So that's our first dye color. We've got orange. Now let's see how that looks in comparison to the first one. As you can see, it's a lot more vibrant than that first dye. It's also going to stay that vibrant color instead of kind of fading. Okay, so next thing you can also find at the grocery store. It's alum. And alum's important in a lot of fabric dyeing. A lot of clothes that are going to be dyed are pre-treated with alum. It just makes the color more vivid in general, and it it makes it so that the fabric is more likely to accept the dye color. Makes it sticky. Makes the dye a little bit more sticky. Okay, so we're going to put in our alum. Now, when you put in a significant amount of alum, it makes this bright pink color. And it's that bright pink prickly pear color that you usually see in the syrups or when you're using the prickly pear itself, as opposed to this bug. And it is one of my favorite colors. It's this vivid pink. Here we go. It shows up. All right. Now this last one is soda ash, and soda ash is used to make dyes more vivid, and it's used in tie dye a lot. So anywhere that sells tie dye kits, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, Walmart, anywhere that sells them is usually going to have soda ash, and it makes the biggest change. It actually changes the dye from an orangish reddish hue into a purple. So if we go ahead and dip a little more in there, we're going to see that this makes a purple hue. Pink and purple. Now this dye is usable as it is right here, so you could use it to paint like watercolors with, or you could use it to dye clothing, or use it in a fountain pen. Okay, so we've got our dye. Let's go ahead and dye some stuff. Let's see. Here we go. So we get a couple of bottles out. And then I'm going to take the sieve because I want to get all of the different body parts out of our dye. So I'm going to go ahead and use this sieve to get rid of all the bits so that I just have that water that has been soaking in that dye. So you just have dye water now. All right. And then I'm going to put in some boiling water, the hottest water that I could get, on my outdoor station here. And the first one I'm going to do is the alum. Remember that one turned it into that bright pink color. Next is going to be the cream of tartar. That was that orange color. And finally, the soda ash. That was the purple. Okay. Once we have those into our cups, we're going to go ahead and put fabric in. There we go. There are 3 different colors that we made from our dye. Now, you're supposed to let these soak and marinate as long as possible. But I didn't have a lot of time before this program, so I was only able to let them sit for 24 hours. But don't worry, after I took a picture, I put them back in their containers. So if you follow us on our social media, I will be posting later this week of what they look like after they've been sitting in that dye for a long time. But I do have a picture of what they look like after just 24 hours. I'm going to pull that up. And here we go. So there's the orange from the cream of tartar. There's that pink from the alum. And then there's that purple from the soda ash. That's after 24 hours of soaking in the dye liquid. Okay, so we have gotten to the the drawing portion of our program. So if you don't already have your drawing supplies out, you're going to want to go grab them. You're going to need a piece of paper, a pencil, or a light colored crayon, and then some different colors to work with. You want some lighter colors and some darker colors. You want to go ahead and gather them together. And we'll get started. Okay. So the first thing I like to draw is kind of my horizon. So this is where my dirt is going to be laying on my land. And then I like to pencil in a sun. Now I might not have a sun in my final picture, but I like to pencil in where the sun is because it's going to help me when I'm figuring out what my drawing looks like. If you look here, if you change the position of a light, it can make things look a lot of different ways. So I just like to know in my picture, whenever I draw something, where my sunlight is coming from. Again, I might draw that in a light pencil and erase it later, or I might keep it. So the first thing I'm going to draw is I'm going to draw my ground, and then I'm going to draw my light source, my sun. Okay. Now, this program that I'm using to draw, unfortunately, it has an autocorrect function, and I couldn't figure out how to turn it off in time for this program. I'll have it off for future programs, but pardon my perfect ovals. Your ovals shouldn't be perfect. Cactuses aren't perfect. They have a lot of variation and a lot of adaptations. So I'm going to start with my first oval. And you can make your oval in a circle, or you can think of it as a diamond shape with curves. And you can make your first one. We're going to make our first one facing us, just facing us. So it's gonna be pretty round and pretty easy to see. Now, once you've made your first cactus oval, your first Nepales, you can make some coming off of it. Now, if you think of a cactus, it doesn't look like Mickey Mouse. When it has its second pad, that pad is usually turned. So think about that when you're making your oval. It's going to be skinnier. It's maybe going to be off to the side. And because of that, it's going to have a different shape. See how skinny this shape is as opposed to this shape? So make your first one round and then give it 2 little ears coming off to the side. And those are going to be turns. They're going to be slightly skinnier. And this is your cactus. It doesn't have to look anything like my cactus. No 2 cactuses look the same. Remember, prickly pears, they are all very individual. They come in purple. Some of them have black spines. These guys have crazy variations. So don't worry about yours looking like mine. Just go ahead and make your first couple of Nepales pads. Go ahead and make your pads. Make your prickly pear as tall as you want it to. If you want your prickly pear to be crawling along the ground, that's fine. If you want some of the pads on the ground because they've fallen off, That's fine. In fact, that's pretty cool. Um, and once you've gotten the structure of your prickly pear in place, um, you've got all of your Nepalis that you want there. Go ahead and on the top, make a couple little babies. Make a couple of brand new pads and little small circles, which are going to be the new pads that haven't grown up yet. Also, at the very top of our prickly pear cactus, in addition to the new pads that haven't grown up yet, are going to be our prickly pears. Okay? Now, the way I like to draw these guys is I like to draw a C, and then I like to draw another C, and a little round at the bottom. And then this gap up here at the top, um, I put a little circle where that gap is. So a C, a backward C, or two parentheses, open at the top, and then a little circle that's going to be the top of the prickly pear. And go ahead and put those wherever you think they would grow. Maybe your cactus has 2 prickly pears. Maybe it has 200. It's your prickly pear cactus. You get to decide. Go ahead and draw all of your little fruits. When you're done drawing your fruits, we can start with some of the shading. So if you've got crayons or markers, pick 2 different colors. Pick a darker color and a lighter color. So maybe a dark green and a light green, or a dark teal and a light teal. Um, 2 different shades of the same color, or even blue and green, with blue being the darker color, also works. And think about where your sun is, and go ahead and create shadows wherever your sun isn't shining. So if we look at our Nepalis here, if my sun is shining in this direction, you can see that I've got a shadow down here at the bottom, and that it's really bright up here at the top. So think about where your sun is. Maybe it's noon. Maybe your sun is at the top. Maybe you drew your sun over here. Maybe your sun is back here and you've only got a little bit of shine and a lot of shadow. Maybe your sun is towards the front here and everything's pretty much illuminated except for the very, very edge of your Nepalis. Okay. Once you've put in your shadows with that darker color, go ahead and take a lighter color and shade everything in, and just leave a little bit of shine at the top part of your cactus. Leave the part that's going to be facing the sun the most, the lightest, and color in the part that's in the shadow the darkest. And you can do that with your new little baby pads, and you can do that with your little tuna fruits as well. Again, just choose 2 different colors, a darker color and a lighter color, or 2 different shades of the same color, and make a dark part and make a light part. And kind of think of where that sun is shining. Great. Now it's time to make our prickly pear prickly. Remember we talked about how the spines kind of go in a spiral up the Nepalis? Grab a pen or a pencil or a darker color and go ahead and make a spiral pattern of these little dots all along the different paths of your prickly pear. And this is a really fun meditative part of drawing this cactus, because you're kind of trying to go for diamonds, right? You have like a dot at the edge of each X, and it spirals up the cactus. Try to think in your mind what those spikes look like when they were on those cactus pads. And now you get to do little dots over all of your cactus pads that are just like the ones that we saw on our prickly pears earlier. Okay? And feel free to manipulate your paper and turn it so that it's easier for you to make those spirals up the cactus. Try to think about different things that have those spirals, where those spirals happen in nature. Maybe a snail shell, or if you think about like the pattern, the triangle pattern that's on the outside of a pineapple. Um, a lot of different plants end up with these kinds of spiral like patterns. Okay, go ahead and draw all those in. Go ahead and put little dots on your prickly pears as well, your tunas. And you can put little dots on your little baby pads. Remember that there were more dots on the edges, along the edges of the pads, because those ones are going to, some of those are going to grow into new pads, and some of those are going to grow into flowers and eventually prickly pears. So there's a bunch on like the top outside of your cactus as well. And just kind of think about that as you're filling them in. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And there's no, like I said, this cactus has so much variety. You could grab any color to make these dots, and it might be something that exists in nature. So don't worry about being right or wrong. Just have fun putting your little spikes into your cactus. Once all those guys are in, we're going to put in the bigger spines. And I find the easiest way to put in the bigger spines is I use a V, because that way I get them the most straight. But you can use whatever technique you want. You can put in one spine for every dot. You can put in 0 spines. Maybe you have a spineless cactus. You could put in 3 spines. You can switch it up depending on where you're drawing your spines. But if you want your cactus to have spines, now is the time where you can go in, and on each one of those little dots that you made in a spiral around your cactus, go ahead and draw in your bigger spikes. A great place to put those bigger spikes, again, is along the outside of your cactus pad, to make it look real angry, um, like it's got some animals to prick to protect itself. Okay. So what we're doing right now is we're going along all of those little spiraling dots that we put on our cactus, and we're adding in some bigger spikes. Now you can make the spikes the same color as the dots that we put in, um, or you can make them a different color. Like I said, there is a prickly pear cactus out there that is purple with black spikes. Um, they come in a lot of different varieties, these guys. Maybe you want to make them white. Maybe you want to scratch them in. Have fun with it. Um, I think it looks really cool when they're kind of hanging off the edge of the cactus, and you can kind of see how angry it is, and how ferocious it is as a plant, and how much it does not want you to eat it. So you can go ahead and go on in and give your prickly pear cactus its big spikes, its big prickles. Okay, once you've given your prickly pear all of its spikes, next you could give it a shadow. You can color in the area around it, make a sky, make an environment, figure out where your prickly pear is growing. Maybe it's growing somewhere with lots of rocks and you can add in lots of rocks. Maybe it's growing in like an old lake bed and it's just really flat and really just one color. Maybe it's the morning and there's a lot of different colors in the sky, or maybe it's the middle of the day and the sky is all just blue, or maybe you're on a different planet and the sky is pink. It's completely up to you. The next part is to just fill in the environment around your prickly pear and decide where it's living. Put in some sand. I always like to add a little shadow. I think about where the sun is, and then I go ahead and add a shadow. Maybe I keep the sun in, maybe I take the sun away. Maybe I add in some different colors. It's all up to you. It is your prickly pear cactus. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today for Cultivating History, Prickly Pear version. Um, if you would like to send me a copy of your prickly pear that you drew in class today, there's a Google form that I sent out to the teachers. Feel free to scan those and send them my way or take a picture of the class. Otherwise, it's been wonderful seeing you here today. My next sportscast is going to be on Valentine's Day, and it's going to be about possums because possums are absolutely awesome, and we should celebrate them as much as we can. So 1 o'clock on Valentine's Day is my next sportscast. It has been wonderful spending this morning with you, and don't have this be your last prickly pear. Just keep drawing them in all different ways, in all different types, in all different colors. This is one of the most adaptable plants that we have in the Americas. Go ahead and make your own versions. Okay, guys, I'll see you later. Goodbye.